Running a business comes with a lot of what ifs, but luckily there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
The McDonald's Snack Wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch Snack Wrap. Spicy Snack Wrap. You broke the internet. For a snack. Snack Wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Welcome to Nature Back, Michael. Tell us in a few words, what do you exactly do and how it's linked to nature?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm Michael Smith, co-founder, general partner at Regeneration.VC. We're an early stage venture capital fund that invests with nature in mind in all that we do. And we are looking to reimagine consumer value chains while we do it and get them back in harmony with nature.
How do you kind of measure that nature in mind? Because I'm sure that most of the weird fossil fuel investors would also claim that they can, invest with nature in mind.
Yeah, it's an important question. We built a measurement system called CRISP, which in fancy long words is Circular Regenerative Investment Sustainability Protocol. And what we look for in CRISP and what we look for in companies that we invest in is to make sure that we are doing no harm to start as a basic. And that means we go through these negative screens first, making sure we're not accelerating extraction. And we'll talk a lot more about the linear economy today, I'm sure, that we don't have things like destructive deforestation, logging, we're not harming wildlife, we're not drift net fishing. And then I want to spend a good amount today talking about toxics and chemicals because they are pervading our consumer products and we are eagerly trying to find profitable ways to get rid of them, which is not simple. So what we look to do is make sure that we don't have any of those activities I mentioned, but that we can actually sort of do the reverse. When you can get rid of toxics, you actually can open up nature for regeneration and regenerative force, which is in our name, in our eventual goal. So that's a little bit about how we think about it. And then we look to measure before we make an investment. And then once we've made an investment on an ongoing basis in our reporting on those different components and how they interact with things like biodiversity.
We'll get into toxics in a minute, but to start off, tell a little bit about how did the kind of fund launching come into place? What was the logic there, and how did it happen?
So I've been passionate about the environment since I was very young, and that was quite some years ago, but I would do it mostly from, being involved with environmental causes and doing actions like cleanups and the things that you might traditionally think of. And then I went into business and I was able to find some success in companies I started and sold. And I always had these separate buckets in my mind, like I could make money here and then I could donate my time and, give whatever I'd made from business to these causes that mattered to me. And about the time I sold my second company, a little over 10 years ago, I learned about impact investing. And that was just this light bulb moment for me because it was like, wait a second, I can invest the money that I have into companies that do good and get a return. I thought that was absolutely, a magical concept and what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And so I just jumped all into that. It turns out it's really hard, but it turns out it can be done, and we're finding ways to do it. So in the beginning of that exploration, I learned about everything. And that involved investing in, energy, in packaging, in data, into a satellite company. And I was really sort of seeing a wide variety of deals. And what I noticed is the majority of the investment capital was going to energy. That, you had solar and wind and batteries that were taking off. This was, late 2018, 2020. And all this money was in energy. And it wasn't like energy was that easy either. There had been a huge collapse of clean tech 1.0. Then you see China come in and really bring the cost curve down. And I think there's a big why around that of why this new energy economy is happening now so successfully. But there was this other bucket, which was really the other half of emissions, called materials. And very little capital was going into materials, and it was called hard to abate industries. So I was like, what's that? Like, what's this hard to abate thing? Right. And of that, the majority was going to concrete and steel, which are huge emitters, but almost nothing was going to apparel, packaging. Very limited was going to food. And these are the industries that if you start adding up their emissions and you start adding up their impact on biodiversity, are the majority of biodiversity and species loss. So my bells were ringing, and I was like, okay, I really wanted to be additional. I really wanted to add something. And my partner in forming our fund came from the apparel, packaging, and food spaces. So we set up Regeneration to go after what we call consumer verticals and consumer climate technologies that we thought we could significantly reduce emissions, chemicals, toxics, and create great businesses while doing it. Cost savings, waste savings. And this is the beautiful concept of circularity, which we should also talk about, because you don't endlessly want to circulate toxic chemicals, right? But then also unlocking bigger ideas with nature tech and into things like regeneration, which is, to me, the most exciting thing when a company can, achieve that and really scale. Because especially, and I'll say this on behalf of Americans, we understand these rapid growth companies. We want to rapidly grow regenerative solutions that are good for planet. And that's something that I think has a lot of potential for the future and to really work even within this current, linear system that we can get out of. And I believe we can get out of.
Over the 140 episodes, we have had a few companies which have clearly nailed this regenerative circularity logic, and I will add a few links to the show notes when the episode gets published. But you said it has been, not easy or difficult or challenging. Is there, from this 10 years, any kind of the clear success stories where you guys have been able to help some startup or early stage company into the kind of positive circularity circle?
Absolutely. There's a lot that gives me hope. I would say that the challenges are the macros have been tough. So starting, our fund started in 2021, and that was an time when there were these very peak valuations. Yep. So even if the company's done well, if you didn't invest in it at the right price, you're sort of like working against yourself, which is tough, right? And we were lucky in that we were slower to deploy, but even still, it's been hard. The challenge, the other macro challenge is right now, investors are looking at a world where they have gotten these unreasonable returns, just incredible returns from large cap, this magnificent 7, 10, whatever you want to call it. And so had they just put money into the market, they'd have incredible, double-digit plus returns, and they'd have daily in-out liquidity and all those things, coupled with high, interest rate environment. it's been a challenging time, not even just for venture capital, but for the private capital markets more broadly speaking.
Absolutely.
So, unless you are investing in a hot lane like AI or, some segments of defense or, health, you've been up against those same headwinds. So I think that's important to remember. But even in that context, we've been able to generate positive value and returns for our investors. And we're really proud of the fact that we've been able to do that while keeping to a thesis like I just described to you. And I think the reason is that, and I'll give you some actual examples of companies, but we've focused on, reducing waste and increasing efficiency. And that's just always good business sense. And that's the core of circularity, right? So if you start with where you take things, right? Where do you get the input? How do you grow it? Is it from, soil? Is it from a bioreactor? Is it from a waste stream, right? Then where do you use the material? Can you get a new life? Can you resell it? Can you repair it? Can you do more value add things to it? And then ultimately, if you can't figure out what to do with it, how do you break it down enzymatically, mechanically, otherwise to then get it back into the system? Not always, the majority of the time, does that work economically. Funny enough, it sounds like it does. But when it does, it can be really powerful. So we met through friends at one of our portfolio companies, Cruise Foam, right? Cruise is a company that takes a waste stream of shellfish from seafood producers. Shrimp, lobster get deshelled and they get dumped. And then that's typically methane in a landfill if it's not, put back into soil or used in another way. We get paid to take that waste stream because the seafood producer has to pay to dump it. We blend it with agricultural waste and we can make a replacement for styrofoam, right? Polystyrene, which is a really, really nasty toxic. It lasts for, thousands of years. It breaks into all kinds of pieces, gets into marine environments, devastates phytoplankton. It's just not a good thing, right? We can now replace that at relative cost parity. And as we scale, we think we can be cheaper than polystyrene. That is our goal. And we're servicing customers like Amazon right now, like major scale corporates that are, wanting to have a replacement, but they need to have the performance and the cost and, all of the things that go with it. And when you're done with this Cruise Foam, you throw it in your home soil and it enriches it, right? So that would be regenerating soil while circulating waste, right? It does both. And it's a really nice example of both of those things. And we've helped them all along the way in getting the compounders that they need to make the product, in sourcing the waste streams, in finding the customers. And it really is a job of an impact investor to be much more than a check, right? Like you got to literally get your hands dirty. Perfect for this podcast.
Absolutely.
And push, because it is not going to happen on its own. And when we invested in that company, 4 years ago, there was a real commitment from corporates to use environmental packaging and alternatives. And they were even willing to pay a premium to use those kinds of materials. Well, that has very much shifted with the majority of corporates. And they now are being viciously competitive. They need to see price parity at a minimum. And that comes with, keep in mind, product and quality parity, which is hard to do when you're competing with virgin plastics, which can be tuned and have so many, trillions of dollars behind them over 80 plus years of research and things like that. And here comes a novel new idea. It's not easy to unseat the incumbent.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite, Obey your thirst.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking about those consumers trying to dump styrofoam into their yard to regenerate the nature. That would be a really, really bad idea. But
Do
I mean,
not do that at home, please.
yeah, because I'm sure people have actually been, dumping styrofoam in all kind of landfills all around the world.
Absolutely, and it leaks, and it's a really messy one.
You said that toxics are really in your agenda these days. Tell us a little bit more. How do you kind of try to solve this massive challenge from the kind of the planet point of view?
Yeah, so toxics are not only increasing since we started, which would have depressed me had you told me that 5 years ago, but they're rapidly increasing. And they have pervaded into every part of our life. And I lived the last several years in the EU. The EU has held the line more than most of the rest of the world, but even the EU is letting in food systems and the packaging that we're using, the coatings, the dyes. It is literally, we have engineered a real mess of novel entities. You can see it captured in the Johann Rockström's, planetary boundaries work. And these novel entities are finding their way into humans, into us, right? And I think an important note is to state the obvious, but we are nature. And when it's bad for us, it's probably bad for the pollinators and all of the living species that, exist on Earth. And so when we dump and take an industry like apparel, right? 8-9% of global emissions, but 30% of wastewater toxics come from the dyeing industry. So just the clothes that we're wearing, right? And this is an alternatively dyed piece of clothing, but let's just take carbon black. This is the color black in everything that you touch in your headphones. And it's made from the least wanted part of fossil fuel that you cut with a ton of chemicals to just make it come off the barrel. It's horrible. And this is
just remove them.
Yeah. As Tarmo removes his headphones. I'm not welcome at dinner parties, Tarmo, I know. And so we found a company called Nature Coatings, which we backed, which takes wood waste. So when you're, let's say you're cutting wood into 2x4 or for lumber, there's all this particles that typically either get washed out or sometimes they get reused. In this case, our company partners with pyrolysis, so that you high heat the wood waste and you make charcoal, biochar, out of the wood waste. This biochar, we have the IP to make it into pigments for clothing. So we have now partnered with Levi's to do their black jeans. And we started off with a smaller pilot, and we are now, rolling that out globally with Levi's. So when you buy their black jeans, you see it with Nature Coatings is the company. It's called Nature Coatings. And it's a, carbon negative pigment because of the biochar. So you find a good use for it. And it's also a really profitable, higher end use than putting it on soils or some other things you can do with biochar. And it ends up protecting these waterways from that pollution of carbon black.
biochar, of course, reminded me of all the kind of carbon-related startups and companies, carbon, trading, carbon buying, dumping, kind of all this part of industry. What's your take on it? Has it helped? Have you guys invested in this sector at all, or how do you see that?
So we have not been an investor in things like carbon credits. And, the carbon component of what we do, interestingly, and past some experts' better judgment, we chose not to make carbon our focus. We absolutely measure it. It is the key metric that gets talked about in our industry. But what we felt was there was a danger to being carbon myopic. And carbon, sadly enough, to your question, has not nailed this yet, right? You wish that you could oversimplify, have it work, and then have it be a case for, other solutions to follow. You see things like biodiversity credits now that follow in the sort of concept of a carbon credit, right? And then there's 1,000 different ones I'm sure you've heard about, or probably I know you've had some on your show related to it. In concept, we like anything that helps us get back in harmony with nature. So if the credits can align producers, can align consumers, can align governments, great. We'd love to see it. And there have been some instances where, regulated markets have worked, and in certain cases, even voluntary markets, although those have been much more challenging and are in an uphill battle. But we as a fund have not made investments in that field. We report our carbon emission reduction and savings.
Yeah, I've noticed that the voluntary carbon market volumes have actually picked up lately quite nicely. It's interesting to see, while the kind of the narrative on the media has been still that it's a scam and so on, which is of course making that industry rather difficult for the companies who are trying to play in there. So the VCM is, I think, very exciting because it allows you to test these new technologies. If you're Vera certified and you go in front of a board of science, and you get approvals, and it's like the beginnings of a hard journey. Look, we've had 30 years in the carbon market, so it's a little harder to say, but we're still in the early innings of it. Now you add in things like satellite and sensors and everything else that comes with it. Now I'm starting to get more excited about it. I think others are too. You saw Pachama was recently acquired by Carbon Direct in New York, and that's a powerful partnership that's going to give credibility to it. So I think there's a lot to like, and there is definite demonization, and there's all kinds of interests, as we can imagine, that don't want to see further progress on carbon markets. I think because we've made the bed, let's do it as right as we can, and then let's get into these other areas. Like and our company should be rewarded for getting rid of toxics. Why are we not only not rewarded? We're up against in many times industry in carbon black that's getting subsidy for these chemicals. So we don't have those subsidies. So we're actually, when you say we need to compete at price parity, it's not even a fair fight.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
That's often across the kind of the new greener industries fighting the same challenge, so to say. The one detailed question, you mentioned packaging a few times. I've seen in Europe a lot of startups coming up in the sector of mycelium, which are often used for packaging or these kind of solutions. What's your take on the, growing mushrooms as a startup?
So we've been looking, and here's a call out to startups on the show. We've been looking for the right mycelium play, and we've certainly looked at a lot of them. The challenge so far that we have seen is back to our price issue and repeatability issue. We found some really cool small startups that could make small batches of things, things that might be good within a small market or a country market, not quite at the EU level, and certainly not something that can displace global packaging. There's some interesting ones we've seen in New Zealand doing this, some interesting ones in the US, but we have yet to find a case that we felt investable from how we look at things. And, for us, we like to see major corporate buy-in. So one of the ways we de-risk companies is we look at them with that either have current customer or investment from a large corporate that shows, okay, there's something here and there's a likely offtake agreement or something to buy. So we're not just like, we would love to do a cool Myco deal, but it has to be a real business to substantiate, that return thing that we were talking about at the beginning of the show.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. I think the scalability is the big challenge, and the price, the two big challenges for the micro startups. So if some of them are coming with or about to sign the deal with Amazon, and then they should give you guys a ring also.
Exactly. We're here. See us at Regeneration.VC. We want to talk to you.
The starting to slowly wrap up a couple of the logic questions. If, in 21, 22, when you guys started, the industry was peaking, we saw some kind of, valuation crash or the investment levels crashing, at least across Europe, surely to some level in the US also. Where do you see now this sector from, investor perspective?
So it's interesting that I'm starting to feel very optimistic, and I have not felt optimistic probably since the last U.S. election, and you could guess why. But I do think there are some inevitable trends with AI and robotics where all the sort of capital is convening. We just made a major investment in that space, which I'd love to talk about. You're going to see the potential for a better partnership with nature, and one that unlocks incredible value. So what I mean by that is there are actions that humans may want to do. You and I want to do that thing, but doing it every day, day in, day out, true behavior change is hard. Robotics and AI unlock something special that could happen if they're used in the right way. So we have a company that we just led the Series A of with our friends at Catapult called Wholebot, which is a backpack size robot that cleans ships. It cleans the underside of a boat and the propeller. And it uses AI, and it knows where it is, and it can very definitively clean the surface and reduce biofouling. So from
like large ships or small ships, or
so to start, we're doing ferries and smaller ships. but we have already brought this to the largest shipping companies in the world, some near you, you could probably guess. And we're experimenting with doing it for larger ships. And even our small initial robot can do the propellers, which is like a 5%, 6% efficiency boost just there on current container ships as well. But keep in mind, this is invasive species travel, right? So it minimizes that, which is great. This is divers that go underwater and have to deal with toxics of coatings that we can get rid of. And then the robot can do a lot more things. Conceptually, we could, deal with underwater issues. My dream would be to use it for invasive urchin species. This is a problem I have here. I'm in Santa Barbara. We have our purple urchins and red urchins, and these purple guys are eating our bull kelp. It's very labor intensive for divers to go down and do these fixes, and it's expensive. But if you could have robotics helping, that's what I'm getting at with, there's a new sort of interesting, abundant age that's opening up that gives me positivity that these really interesting nature technology companies that are coming out have a place in space. And no matter how far in advanced our AI models get and to AGI and all those things, we are inevitably going to have to not only protect, but figure out a way where, this planet can thrive alongside us. And it's imminently doable with these new upcoming technologies. So I'm starting to see that even through the cycles and the hype and all of this, that we have a way forward. And that gives me a lot of excitement and hope.
That's fantastic to hear, because every now and then when I look at, the global warming graphs or data about the state of the planet, it kind of, not always feed into the optimism, I would say.
I think it's pretty easy to get down and out about it, and the numbers are not on our side, and the warning signs are all there. And so it just becomes a point, like, when do we want to do the thing? When are we actually going to get in and row in the same direction? But I think there are now example business models that can work, that can scale. If you save boats 15% of their emissions by cleaning them better, one of the largest European, companies in the world doing this, you could save, or rather make $500 million a year just on that, and you're just saving resources, right? So there are great business models to be made out of this space, and that gives me hope, because I know that people will get behind that. And you can't will it and want it and wish it. Like, you have to go out and make those businesses. And there are some incredible companies coming out of the EU right now that get us really excited. Stuff I'm seeing here in California that gets me excited. Stuff we're seeing in New Zealand, Australia. So the solutions are on the way. We got to focus our capital. We got to scale what's working and work together to make some positive for the planet.
Good. Thanks, Michael. That's a very good thought to finish the recording with. If you like the show, subscribe and leave a good rating on the podcast platform of your choice. It would mean a world to us.
Ever spend all day fishing and catch nothing? That's what happens to hackers when Cisco Duo's on watch. Every login, every device, every user, protected. Cisco Duo. Fishing season is over. Learn more at duo.com.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. One of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. Mm-hmm. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Electricast.